when Moldovan government and Moldovan people speak out in the backdrop of all of the struggles that they're going through, it resonates. What is the role of modern-day slavery, and what is the role of global consumers in the ongoing genocide? If a country like Moldova, dealing with real separatist threats, if that China logic prevails, should have set up a concentration camp in here. The collective punishment as an excuse for insecure dictatorship. So when we see a wrongdoing, we have to speak out. That's a human nature. That's the nature of free people. If the economic interest trumps the moral obligation, then the history will be very unkind to those governments and countries.
What is the purpose of your visit to Chisinau? What do you plan, and what agreements do you want to achieve here?
I have two primary objections. One is to share experience and have a conversation with Moldovan people in light of their own history with communism and their struggle to preserve and protect their homeland. The other purpose is to share some stories relating to the Uyghur people, with the ultimate goal to raise awareness about the ongoing genocide in China. That has been 7 years, if you start looking at the time it started in 2016. And share this perspective and the background about why the Chinese Communist Party engaged in this kind of brutal behavior in a broad daylight in the 21st century, and how they carrying this genocide out. Specifically, why do they use technology, how they're using technology, artificial intelligence algorithm, for example. And what is the role of modern-day slavery, and what is the role of global consumers in the ongoing genocide? And then finally, I've been encouraging the Moldovan president, I also have been hoping to see some policy responses on the issues that I've been addressing.
What kind of policy?
Well, policy responses, Moldova is a democracy. It is an active member of the community of democracies. Moldova has a very strong ties to liberal democracies within the European Union and the United States. And when Moldovan government and Moldovan people speak out in the backdrop of all of the struggles that they're going through in economic front, political front, and geopolitical front, of course, it resonates when countries like Moldova and Taiwan speaks out about their fellow human being subject to atrocity, crimes, simply because of their political belief or lack thereof, simply because of their religion, simply because of ethnicity. Slavery is wrong, unconscionable, it's a cancer on our values. Using technology for political repression deserves condemnation. And revisit of our connections to some of the regime. All of these things are relevant for the health and future of Moldova and Moldovan people.
How can Moldova contribute?
The Moldovan people a government along with the government could do 3-4 things. First of all, Moldova should join the effort along with its European allies, along with its North American allies, along with Democrat allies in Asia. When there's a motion, there was a decision, there's an initiative in multilateral institutions such as the United Nations, we would like to see Moldova not only showing up to the extent leading. One typical case come to mind, which is Taiwan. Taiwanese parliament, in the face of all the existential threat that they're facing, they went ahead to recognize in their parliament that what is happening to the Uyghur people by the Communist Party amounts to genocide and crimes against humanity. We don't expect that kind of decision in the near term, maybe possibly in the long term, but acting as a responsible and an active member of international communities, specifically community of democracies, Moldova, much like the rest of the world, have been addicted to cheap consumer goods coming from China. Today, Chinese forced labor practices polluted the global supply chain. We need to make an effort collectively, individually, bilaterally, multilaterally, to tell the Chinese that no, we cannot do this. You cannot do this. You cannot make me complicit in this genocide, making me an investor in your genocide. Stop purchasing or acting, act based on your conscience that say no to the slavery. So these kind of messages can be advocated with the government help. So that's one area. The other area that Moldova can do is to join the effort to regulate the social media or take necessary steps to create a healthy environment for our youth. Today, along with the youth, teenagers from all around the world, Moldovan kids are using dangerous platforms like WeChat and TikTok. That is a very unhealthy platform.
I think that it is a very difficult and large topic, but first of all, I can't agree from the start with you, because I think that we shouldn't limit any social media or platform, because this is our right for information.
But that's an argument partly that the Chinese government is making through TikTok. We're not, myself and others do, and those who have been advocating for clean technology, never said that we should restrict people from accessing to various platforms. But it needs to be looked at case by cases. Let me walk through why this TikTok is a big concern. TikTok is owned by a company called ByteDance. ByteDance has a strategic partnership agreement with the Chinese Ministry of Public Security, which is the equivalent of the Ministry of Interior in Europe. Imagine that the Communist Party controlled platform has a strong link to the Ministry of Public Security, has a joint venture agreement with two state-owned media organizations, spreading news or disseminating news, what kind of value that it might have, what kind of toxic effect it might have in the mind and soul of the younger generation. So my point is this: you can add access to any platform, but this platform is not innocuous as harmful as it appears. It has a very specific objective. One of those objectives is to use it for disinformation. ByteDance, again, is the largest media organization today. If you look at the number of people look at their phones or download TikTok to get the news, is significantly higher than any of the largest circulated newspapers. As a media person, as a reporter yourself, you can appreciate. Can you imagine that New York Times, Wall Street Journal, or Financial Times, Deutsche Welle, CNN has 100 million subscribers? Do you know what kind of business entity, what kind of media entity that would it become? People not reading the actual news, reading the headline disseminated by platforms like TikTok. This is where the dangerous part of it. The second part of it is a mental health concern. This platform is banned in China. It's a news flash for your audience. TikTok is banned in China. The TikTok version of, the Chinese version of TikTok is called Douyin, that does not allow any of the content that you see in TikTok in Europe and the United States. What does it tell you? This is specifically designed platform with $1 billion investment before it was launched to create the soft image, create this environment that make people to be addicted, and make even some people to come out and defend the existence of TikTok. It was all strategic plan. One more piece. They have a Los Angeles office, their headquarters in Los Angeles. Close to 80% of the employees at TikTok are Chinese. What does it tell you? In American tech firms, if you're a Google engineer or if you're a Facebook engineer, if you misuse personal information, there will be legal consequences. Whereas in TikTok, they brought in their own people. They can be immune from that kind of consequential situation. Today, in ByteDance control two different platforms. On the Douyin version, the Chinese kids study math and science. On the TikTok version, the girls looking at body image and committing suicide. So you tell me if this is a normal platform for our younger generation. Moldovan youth, American youth to get access and get their news. In a country, in a society, when you get the news through communist propaganda, then you have a serious problem.
Maybe we should teach this young generation to understand what kind of content they see and how to, what kind of attitude must be there. Maybe in America this could work because of strong democracy. In Moldova we have a very fragile democracy and to give some leverages to government is very dangerous. So
you know, it can go hand in hand. You know, it cannot be like or it can be and. You know, the further democratization, refining, improving Moldovan democracy at the same time being mindful of the harmful effect of those digital forms. You know, just to look at the balance. If you're concerned about government having too much control of your life, which is also a concern in the United States. So it's understandable, I totally get it. But the problem is in the short term and the long term, you also have to look at that generation could give so much to improvement or betterment of that democracy. If you let their mind fill in with information coming from Communist Party, you will not have that democracy. That democracy actually could die faster. So it is extremely important to have that vibrant, well-informed, well-educated, dedicated young generation who is there to fight for Moldovan democracy. If you ignore that brain, this country is already facing brain drainage. People leaving the country. And if you let the young kids to wake up every day to Russian propaganda, the Chinese propaganda, and they will lose hope in this country and they end up leaving. So who's going to rebuild? Who's going to build, improve the lives, build the Moldovan economy and make the lives better? Who's going to make this country more strong and prosperous society? Motivated.
How to find this balance?
Well, education, this is precisely what I'm doing here. I was born, raised in a communist re-education camp, and I live in the United States, a free country. So when the Chinese say something, I get it. I understand what they're trying to do. I'm not claiming to be an expert on China, but I know a thing or two about how they operate. And sharing this perspective, sharing this experience, sharing this analysis and information that I have.
You also talked about cheap goods from China. Yeah. Are we talking about all the goods, Chinese goods, or only about slave Uyghur labor?
Well, in short, it could be anything as simple as your cotton T-shirt, and it can be as fancy as your electric vehicle or solar panels. Or it could be as important as medicine, as important as the PPE, the personal protective equipment that hospitals are using, and you and I used during the pandemic when we were required to wear a mask. The consumer products, and at least the solar panels, and the PPEs have been somewhat, have been products coming to Moldova from China. The consumer products are the cheap products that you find in the Sunday market, in the small shops. The one question anyone should ask, how do I feel to let the companies to profit, whichever is making, let the Communist Party to have more funding through my consumer dollars to fuel this genocide? How do I feel unwittingly or wittingly become a complicit in the ongoing genocide and crime? And if the answer is the way that it should be, like no, not in my name. It's not exactly an analogous situation, but in the United States, in light of our close ties to China, specifically in the trade and economics aspect, my government, United States government, has taken a number of bold steps because people were demanding. And American people said, no, you cannot persecute somebody because of their religion. I don't care if it's Muslim, Christian, or Catholic. No, leave them alone. That's the message. You cannot bring back cotton trade. You know, we have a history of slaving African Americans. So American people don't want to see the history repeat itself. And when the technology is being used for persecution, like an AI algorithm, so this is how nation supposed to respond. And this is how collective voices can be heard and compel our politicians, policymakers, and the democratic governments like yours and mine to act and to do the right thing and get on the right side of the history.
We are talking about Moldova. We are a developing country, and with the very low quality of life of most people in Moldova. So the price is very important. So how to explain that to give money for Chinese government is not good?
I know it's difficult. I know exactly where you're coming from with that important question. But because of the conversation you and I are having, because of the conversation that I have been having with policymakers all around the world, and because of the conversation that I'm having and others having with the consumers, there are an army of activists out there doing public education. Companies are realizing that staying in China, continue to enslave people to make products for Moldovan consumers, American consumers, are untenable. So they're leaving. They're leaving to other countries. This problem in the long term will be solved because I don't want to live in a world that slavery is okay. I don't think you would be comfortable living in a world slavery is fueling our economy. So there will be some tangible actions that we already see. Like every day when I look at the newspapers, business newspaper, I see companies readjusting, moving, relocating. There are companies moving to Bangladesh, Vietnam, India. The reason is quite simple. A, it's becoming extremely difficult to do business in China. Too much government intrusion, threat against the business executives. And three, we cannot do our due diligence because the government does not allow us to do the due diligence to comply with the US laws or European laws. I think that Moldovan government struggling to improve its economic condition, maybe should start a domestic industry. There's a youth population here. There's a workforce available. And there's a demand, political will to develop economy. For example, in the agricultural sector, the Moldovans don't have to import certain products from countries like China. And you know, maybe relying on different countries. There's different countries around the world. Case in point, Turkey that has really strong textile industry. Maybe looking for different countries for import of consumer goods. They're also equally less expensive. China is not the only...
They also face with the slave labor.
No, not in Turkey. There are few countries were implicated in the past. Sri Lanka, for example, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan. Uzbek president just went to the United Nations a few days ago, made a very powerful announcement that his government get rid of the forced labor. So there has been some movement. Again, China has not been the only country for enslaving the workforce, but this is massive. The Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and others are not the major hub for global supply chain, but China is.
When China started to discriminate Uyghurs, and why?
The Uyghur people very proud of their ethno-religious identity, cultural heritage, way of life, their Euro-Asian identity, to be exact. To the Communist Party, the Uyghur religion, Uyghur ethnic identity or racial identity, always been a problem. Two ways. One, if you maintain that ethno-religious identity, it creates kind of a separate identity from the ruling majority Han Chinese, which will potentially make it very difficult for the Chinese government in their thinking. They don't appreciate the diverse society. Diversity is a problem for the Chinese government. So it will become a source of political unrest, resentment, political resistance, which is also misconstrued, a mistaken belief. As for the religion, it's even more serious. The Western religion that includes Christianity and Islam is a major concern for the Chinese, because they think that it collides with the communist ideology. Because in Christianity and Islam, Abrahamic religion, you believe in a creator. There's a life after. You have, don't cheat, don't steal, don't lie, loving, caring, forgiving life guideline that you follow. And that's not communist ideology teach you to follow. It's not only incompatible, it's in a collision course. The Chinese regime already figured that out. This is why they see religion as a sign of disloyalty to the state, and also potentially a challenge to the communist ideology that will create instability. So with that mindset, they never explain and go out in details, but they always use the term pushback against Western influence operations, or Western influence, Western encirclement, meaning democratization, human rights, free press, free speech, freedom of religion. The other problem to the Chinese is that piece of land that the Uyghurs call homeland. Anyone who just opens the map, look at it, they will be amazed how big this piece of territory is. It's the size of Western Europe. It makes 1/6 of the China proper. It has 1,000 kilometers international border. In the United States, I make this comparison, it's the size of Alaska. It's huge, 4 times the size of California. And also it is a gateway to Eurasian market for Chinese goods. And also it is an access point to Eurasian natural resources. They have oil fields in Kazakhstan. They're excavating other minerals, even in Afghanistan. And also they are getting access to African natural resources through Eurasian continent. If you look at it, it just connects, easy connection provides. And then lastly, they have a geostrategic interest, much like what Stalin had in mind. When you have that long of international border, when you sit in such a strong, such a large landmass with rich natural resources, oil, gold, coal, cotton, zinc, copper, I mean, you name it, pretty much everything is there. That's why the Uyghur people always feel that, oh, we're both blessed and cursed at the same time. We're blessed, we call this beautiful land a homeland. We're cursed because of that attraction, we become a subject of the communist regime. So those are the actual reasons, but when you listen to the Chinese and when those visitors goes to visit those Potemkin villages, the happy faces, dancing, singing, happy minorities, look European looking people, pretty people, handsome people, you don't see the actual picture. So that's what they try to portray, at the same time saying that we're fighting against terrorism, extremism and separatism to save these pretty faces. So they paint very different picture, and it's working. Ironically, sadly, quite disturbingly, that vast majority of the Muslim countries around the world that also happen to be unstable or ruled by authoritarian regime, kind of tapping into that Chinese narrative, in some instances repeating, echoing Chinese narrative, and also complementing the Chinese government's treatment of their own fellow Muslims. This is what I'm worrying about fragile democracies like Moldova. I worry because People are weak. There's so much vacuum that the Chinese or others bad actors can fill in and potentially alter the way of life of the people who are striving to become a member of European Union. So the European Union aspiration can be hampered with the bad actors like the one in Beijing.
When I try to understand what is going on there, I understand that Chinese government think that Muslims equal extremists, and they are afraid of separatism in Xinjiang.
Yeah.
How do you think? What is primary? What is secondary? Or we cannot say about one thing, and this is the wheel of the problems.
Two things. One, there has never been an organized separatist movement within Chinese sphere. This is all what the Chinese says. And the other thing, based on few violent incidents, China is making counterterrorism, a terrorism claim that also does not support it with the evidence. So if the China says separatism or scream separatism, terrorism 3 times does not make it true. And also, you may disagree with me. If a country like Moldova dealing with real separatist threats, if that China logic prevails, should have set up a concentration camp in here. The collective punishment as an excuse for insecure dictatorship. You cannot go preemptively to punish people thinking that they may be demanding political autonomy or separate state. It is a cheap excuse. It's a justification of an actual crime and future crimes and normalization of crimes, as the Chinese have been doing through this kind of a modern day a collective punishment of a vulnerable ethno-religious group. The international community should say that Europe, specifically this continent, have seen Milosevic, Mussolini, Hitler, and now Putin should be leading this effort, not the United States, this continent, because they know exactly, they lived communism, fascism, and Nazi Germany. Oh my God, every ugly chapters in a book can be found in a European history, and the Europe should be leading. And the Europeans should say, I've seen this movie before, I know exactly how it ends. When a group of people collectively punished because of their religion, because of their ethnicity, because of their wealth, and because of their knowledge. That's exactly what happened to the Jewish people. We've seen this in here.
United Nations organization said about 1 million people who is in these schools.
Yeah.
Is it right? What
you can say concentration camps. It's a common term.
So
I can explain to you why these.
I've seen a lot of videos of BBC or Deutsche Welle, and when they went there and asked to show them these places, they saw people dancing, singing.
If you're happy, clap your hands.
Yeah. Right.
It's we call it Potemkin village.
You left Xinjiang in 1995.
Yeah.
So what changed since your childhood? And what is the situation, the real situation?
The Uyghur repression by the Communist Party has been ongoing as long as I remember, as long as I've been breathing. But this is the fact. It has changed from a racial profiling, racial discrimination to a full swing genocide. Looking back, I feel sometimes hesitant to complain about the reasons that I left communist China 28 years ago. It was a social discrimination, mildest political repression. But now, thinking about the fact that I cannot even hug my mom and take her to the hospital while she is suffering Parkinson's disease, heart disease, and diabetes, congestive heart failure, anxiety disorder. She has lots of medical problems. I cannot even be there. My father passed away last April, and I cannot hold my mother's hand, hug her, hold her, and pay respect to this amazing human being who raised me. intellectual force behind my upbringing. Since I left China, I had been able to spend only 11 months with my parents in the last 28 years. Think about that, how that make you feel. I mean, that in of itself explains what other people possibly going through. Even with somebody with my access, my professional life, all the other things that I'm grateful to, I'm grateful for, is not available for everyone. I just imagine I have not seen my mother in 19 years now. It's not because of her inability to travel or inability to buy airplane ticket, simply because Chinese wants to punish me. So that's just the psychological damage, emotional damage, mental anguish that it created in family like mine. Thank God that I'm still being able to convey a message and speaking. That a lot of people even don't have the type of freedom, the half of the freedom, 1/5 of the freedom that I have. So that's what is that I think should give you an idea what other people are going through.
China is a sovereign country, and how can other countries influence?
Yeah. This is not about Chinese sovereignty. This is about the moral obligation. This is about countries that are signed onto the Genocide Convention, those 150 plus countries, fulfilling its treaty obligation. So when we see a wrongdoing, we have to speak out. That's a human nature. That's the nature of free people. That's the nature of the free societies like yours and mine. That's one, the moral obligation. As a human being, as we have a moral obligation to speak out. And the same is true with the politicians. People in a policy position, influential position, will make a difference. We have only 10 countries today, parliaments and governments, formally recognize the Uyghur atrocities committed against Uyghur people as genocide and crimes against humanity. That is embarrassment. We're talking about 150 plus countries signed on to the Genocide Convention. What happened to the rest of the 140? They're all afraid of China. When it comes to Putin, they're quick. The companies quick to pull out, suspend their businesses in less than 2 weeks after the Putin's invasion of Ukraine. When it comes to China, knowing that this regime is committing genocide in a broad daylight, enslaving their own people, using technology to use human bodies as a lab material, deserves a much larger, if not equal, condemnation, because people realize that it's risky, costly, economically, politically to stand up against the China. That's wrong. That is unconscionable.
Whatever, if we're talking about Russia, for example, we know about Russia more things because of geopolitical situation. We are seeing that from 2014, a lot of countries gave sanctions against Russia, but she continues these things. And in 2022, she invaded Ukraine. She erases Ukrainian people, but sanctions doesn't work.
No, it works. Sanctions work. It does not work overnight. It doesn't work in a short period of time. United States and our Western allies also impose sanctions against the Chinese. The European Union, Canada, UK, in March 2021, there was a coordinated sanctions. But sanctions is an interesting story. When you impose sanction, the immediate effect cannot be seen. It takes a while to show up. For example, when you
a lot of East countries lives with sanctions a lot of time, a lot of
that is something that they need to answer their future generation for doing what they have done or not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So if the economic interest trumps their moral obligation, then history will be very unkind to those governments and countries. They're not on the right side of it. For those who've joined the sanction, maybe suffering a little bit, maybe paying a little bit more for electric and heating bills, but at the end of the day, history will reward them for taking a moral position. So the sanctioning, just looking at immediate result, and oftentimes I need to remind you something, whether it be China, whether it be North Korea, whether it be Russia, None of these governments, or even Iran, go out in public and said, we are suffering as a result of EU sanction or US sanction or Canada sanction. They don't say that. If they had that kind of decency, we wouldn't be having this conversation. They lie to their people. They inflate and doctor the statistics. And what we're dealing is like a secretive countries, governments. We never know what they're really doing, like in the case of China.
And they don't stop.
Yeah, they don't.
This is
so
main
what we can do,
question.
sorry for interrupting you, what we can do as a citizen of the global citizens and members of the responsible governments in democratic countries to do the right thing. Coming together and push back and keep saying no.